Wow, we're wearing a Versus
That's
t-shirt
right.
today.
I will be taking the pro-Tarantino stance.
Just noticed what you were wearing right
I'm like, this is the one opportunity for this shirt's perfect for me.
What is going on there? Citizens of the Reject Nation, did Tarantino insult Marvel actors? That is the discussion today. John, how are you?
I am cinema. How are you?
I am also cinema. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been seeing this going around a bunch, and I feel like we can have a really fair, open, honest discussion, not just turn this into a big rant video. I just don't feel that way about this. But I do find it an interesting discussion to be had, especially because Quentin Tarantino, one of my all-time favorite filmmakers, love Marvel as well. Now my dads are fighting with each other. What's going on here?
It's okay. The Christmas presents are going to be that much better.
But if you guys can leave a like, that would be very much appreciated. All right, so what's happening today right now is the main quote that's going around, Tarantino saying Marvel actors aren't movie stars. When I first heard this, my first thought was, I'm sure there's more to this story. Yeah, I know.
Wreck it all.
Over a table, I got mad.
Tarantino,
I said, you're no longer one of my favorite filmmakers, Tarantino. I hate you. When I heard this, I was like, I'm sure there's more to this context than just that. Because, yeah, I mean, if you just isolate that sounds insulting. I get how people can say it's insulting, and then everyone's just having their discussion, and most people go off of one line instead of bothering to read the additional context. First reaction to that, I feel like there's a lot of thoughts to sort of, render from that one statement.
Yeah.
Is like, yeah, Tarantino's not right, but Tarantino's also right. That's the bottom line.
Not entirely wrong, yeah.
There's a gray area to what he's saying, and then sure enough, when you dive into what he actually said, I'm like, yeah, that's more along the lines of what I thought he was more than likely saying. So what Tarantino said, part of the Marvelization of Hollywood is you have all these actors who become famous playing these characters, but they're not movie stars, right? Captain America is the star, or Thor is the star. I mean, I'm not the first person to say that. I think it's been said a zillion times, but it's like, these franchise characters that become a star. I'm not even putting them down, frankly, to tell you the truth, but that is one of the legacy of the Marvelization of Hollywood movies, all right?
You take your baking soda this morning?
I did. What I'm interpreting as, like, the gist of it is there was a day and age when there was a thing called movie stars, meaning where if a person starred in a film, it could really sell tickets just because that person was in it. Whereas something like Marvel, they don't really need a movie star to sell their films. It's like Simu Liu is not that well known. He's like it was like mid, but Shang-Chi can do well. I didn't really know Chadwick Boseman. A lot of people didn't know Chadwick Boseman. Like, they might have been familiar with some of his other roles, but the name Chadwick Boseman wasn't as household. But then everyone knew him from Black Panther. Because there's such a thing as a franchise making a star. Like, that's why some people take on James Bond to become an actor, to have more roles down the road. Doesn't always pan out, but that's why sometimes they do it. I wouldn't say the star sells James Bond. James Bond who sells it.
Oh, yeah. And that's part of the allure of signing up is you will now be catapulted to the next echelon if you do a good job of actors.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The Harry Potter kids, none of them were movie stars. They're not. And that's just part of the way it works with anything that's based off of a really popular intellectual property is usually the intellectual property is the star, and especially if the intellectual property has a main character that is the highlight of it all. It's like sometimes the story itself is the big thing, but you will need a movie star to help sell that. But a lot of times it is just the character, and that's part of what makes comic books so special is the character. So he's not wrong. They are the star of it. But I think the way how it's being taken is that these guys are not qualitative movie stars. I think that's the way some people are receiving this. They are not great actors. They are not worthy of being movie stars. I could see the way the responses are, and that's why it's become such a headline. These people cast they're not leads. They're not real good leads, you know?
Yeah, he's poo-pooing their qualities as actors rather than people realizing that what he's saying is that the characters maybe... It's like you see Chris Hemsworth in something, and I feel like a lot of the population is apt to say, oh, Thor's in that. So, like, the character's legacy follows the actors around, but they still go after movie star caliber actors, people who would be movie stars, people who can open both a big blockbuster, but who have the chops to guide had an Oscar movie. It seems like Marvel especially has pushed forward the trend of hiring like the best caliber actors you can for your giant blockbuster property and making movie stars out of actors who were mostly just known for their acting prowess before that.
And I think, Marvel being one of the most dominant thing right now in Hollywood, it makes sense to kind of shine a spotlight on it. But what I'm saying in response to what Tarantino's talking about is like, this problem has existed for many actors before Marvel, depending with any big IP characters, like Daniel Radcliffe wanted to break away from that. Robert Pattinson had a hard time breaking away from the Twilight image.
Anyone who plays Batman.
Anyone who plays any popular character, that can stick with you, and that's why the word typecasting exists, and oftentimes having to try to get out of a shadow of a famous character. Like that's just a thing that happens.
I'd also say even though Chris Pratt was already on the rise with things like Parks and Rec and other movie appearances, it's safe to say Star-Lord made him a movie star, and now he's gotten a star in a bunch of other things.
He's also like on certain technicalities, he's not entirely correct. Like Chris Evans, it was pretty popular beforehand. Maybe he wasn't like A-list star, but he was pretty famous.
Been the Human Torch already.
Yeah, there was for the 2 movies. Sometimes the Marvel movies, and while they weren't the headline actors, they would have supporting actors in them. Gwyneth Paltrow, Oscar-winning actress. Jeff Bridges was in there. Don Cheadle. Mickey Rourke.
Ed Norton
maybe
was
not a
the
movie
Hulk.
star, Mickey Rourke, but he's a movie star. He just came off The Wrestler. Tommy Lee Jones was in Captain America, which I know he's not that famous anymore, but there was a time where he was like a movie star. Anthony Hopkins in Thor. Then you look at like Paul Rudd in Ant-Man. Not a DiCaprio or a Tom Cruise level.
But he was a guy who, when they cast him, you were like, oh, Paul Rudd. Like, it wasn't, oh, wait a minute, I got to remind myself who Benedict Cumberbatch is really quick. It's like, no, everybody knows Paul Rudd. It's just, this is a different type of movie than we're used to seeing him in.
Angelina Jolie in Eternals. I think that's the one you just really can't argue with. Like,
oh, sure, yeah.
She is a star.
Michael Douglas.
Michael Douglas in Ant-Man. I think, though, that's a good thing. And I think this is like it's being talked about as a negative thing. Like I love when Tarantino does get actors like, let's pair up Brad Pitt and DiCaprio in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I'm like, that's exciting to me. Those are 2 famous people coming together.
2 of our couple remaining movie stars, too. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yay, those 2 in a movie, that's awesome. Like, I know that feeling, and no, Marvel does not lean into that. That's just a fact. I think the way it's being taken is this, like, super negative thing.
Yeah.
When I'm like, well, no, I mean, it's not even a negative thing. Everyone's acting like he just flat out, like, I'm putting it in the title of the video because that's how everyone's taking it. But because I don't think he's insulting them. I'm like, this is just a fact of the situation that when you play characters this famous, oftentimes that character will follow you around. But sometimes you can break for Daniel Craig. It's got the Knives Out franchise. Chris Evans was in that too as a scene stealer.
Yeah, totally. And Chris Evans, like various of the Marvel actors have gone on, and you can still say that Marvel is a big part of, their movie stardom, but there are tons and tons of starring movie roles for them now that their whole point is to be opened up by the clout that the actor brings. You have like the glut of Chris Hemsworth Netflix movies and things like that to look at. Here, part of what is muddying the conversation of what he's actually trying to get at is I think it's him declaring this the Marvelization of Hollywood, because I think if you look at the discussion in a macro sense, the death of the movie star as we know it, or as we have known it for, the better part of Hollywood history, that is a real thing, but I don't think it's Marvel at the center of it, or Marvel creating this new trend of, oh no, we don't have movie stars anymore, we just have, the stable of Marvel actors or something. Like, they're reaching for people who already are on the come up, and I think that just the change in the business is across the board. It's not just Marvel. Movie star is dying as a breed anyway. Now they're just, kind of synthesizing the new version of that.
Well, I think, though, that it wasn't even Marvel that really started it.
No.
It's like what people started craving was to get lost just in the characters. I think there is a part of me that when I go see a Tom Cruise movie, I kind of want to see Tom Cruise. like that's my association with that is I'm not really like, I want to only see Maverick on screen. I'm like, no, I'm aware I'm watching Tom Cruise, but I want to see a good Tom Cruise.
It's about seeing Tom Cruise, but with a slightly different layer each time.
Yeah,
exactly.
But
or Will Smith or whoever it is. Yeah.
I feel like when the dawn of like True. There was like method acting in the form of like De Niro and Pacino, but when there was the transformative like consistency of people like Daniel Day-Lewis and Christian Bale and Gary Oldman, that started changing the tide, I feel, in a lot of ways of what is a movie star. Because then all the other movie stars get accused of playing the same character now.
Yeah.
And because now it's like so much it's easier to do that when they're not really changing their voice and stuff. Whereas you got people like Christian Bale, Christian Bale's a movie star. He's in Thor: Love and Thunder.
Yes, and it was Batman.
Natalie Portman is a movie star.
Yep.
Yeah. My point with that is we want to not see the movie star. We want to see the character only. So getting people in Marvel who are like mid to unknown helps that. Whereas like, yeah, I mean, I don't feel like you really need a movie star. This change started occurring before Marvel really took off, is what I'm getting at.
No, 100%. I think you're absolutely right that nowadays we value a movie star level of charisma, but also the ability to be a character actor. I think we get much more excited now by seeing some big name actor we all know try something different or try something that surprises us. And that naturally, I think, takes you away from focusing in on your innate charisma, and that's the character and that's the role. And yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's been on a decline, and I think you can watch as several just movie stars' careers have started to take declines over time.
Yeah.
And I mean, you know, I feel like you can trace those roots back to maybe around the time Marvel begins to kick off, but probably before that, you know, probably at the turn of the 2000s, you can probably note that starting to happen.
But yeah, guys, I mean, what do you think about this piece of news? Do you agree with Tarantino? Because I feel like we had a pretty fair discussion here, but you leave me your thoughts down below. Subscribe, click that bell, leave a like, and, you know, look into full context before you get upset.
Read the article.